the snappiest dresser right down to my inch wide tie.
Hello and welcome to the Fisher Protocol, a channel dedicated to the world's greatest rock and roll band, The Who. This band is a shared passion of ours, and these discussions are more of a personal journey than a critical review. Also, no money is made from these videos, so please let us know we're not alone in Who land by taking a quick second to like, subscribe, and share with your Who-minded friends. Constructive feedback is always welcome in the comments below. We do not claim to be experts, just fans of the world's greatest rock and roll band, The Who. My name is Ethan. Today on the show, I'm joined, as always, by Tom and Bets. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Today's guest started following The Who at age 15. As a longtime fan, in 1995, he started compiling the Ultimate Who timeline. In 1999, he turned that into the Who This Month website. His internet page about the atrocious conditions of the movie The Kids Are Alright led to the much-loved restoration of that movie in 2003, for which he wrote the liner notes. His The Who This Month website has become one of the rock-solid references for Who lovers worldwide and continues daily on social media. You know him as Brian Atlanta. Please welcome Brian Cady. Am I pronouncing that right? Hello.
Yes, exactly right.
Right. Well, thank you for being here. Wanted to get you on here for a while. I know I offered you to come on like 2 years ago, and then my back went out.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I do apologize, but we're glad you're here. We are having a heck of a renaissance of our show here. People are getting in touch. Things are happening. So I thought it'd be a perfect time to bring you on.
I know that Matt Kent and that's a really nice draw.
Yeah, and it's like just apropos of nothing. When Pete was on the Daily Show years ago, I just remember a little story about how when he was first starting Eel Pie or whatever, they had to stop it because they noticed that 400 people came to see it, and Jon Stewart or somebody was like, "That's a lot." He was like, "Well, no, it'd be the same 400 people over and over again." And so when I see how many views Matt Kent got, it's like between 300 or 400. I'm like, well, it's the same guys. It's the same
Yes. Well, at least they're still around.
Yeah.
Right. All right, so I ask this with everybody. I'll ask it with you. When did the Who choose you? When were you first bit? And what was the song? What happened? Give us the story.
It's a rather peculiar thing amongst Who fans. Back when I was about 14 or 15, I was really into movies. And I was buying all these books, Hitchcock and things like this. And the big popular thing at the time was something called the auteur theory, which was the idea that directors were the authors of their film. Well, one night I was with a friend of mine. We were watching TV, and a commercial comes on for UNICEF. And amongst all the videos, they're playing in the background, "Tommy, can you hear me?" And I go, "Tommy, can you hear me? What's this about?" And my friend went, "You've never heard Tommy." Okay, so he lent me his copy. And I listened to it a few times, and I went, this is a guy who is doing on records what the great directors are doing. I need to read up about him. And so I check into the library and find out there's nothing. There's no books. There's nothing on it. So I start becoming very interested in trying to figure things out for myself and buying all the records. And it wasn't long until I was completely hooked.
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
I'll just stick to the early stuff. Just really quick. The first concert. When did you see it?
First concert was late November 1973 at the Omni in Atlanta, where the Who performed Quadrophenia. I was way up in the rafters. When you talk about Quadrophenia, and of course there hasn't been an official release of a Quadrophenia show from that tour.
Yeah.
The only one I think that survives is the Philadelphia and maybe the Washington, D.C. ones at the end. Well, it sort of ran like this. You had the surround sound. It all started with this I Am the Sea being played in surround sound throughout the arena. Then they went right into the real me and amped everyone up. Ah! And me, Silence. Townsend or Daltrey walk up to the microphone. I was all here for a warm sure. Or this is how it sounded in an arena at the time because the acoustics were terrible unless you were right up front.
Mm-hmm.
and meanwhile, the energy level goes, and they start all over again with the next song, like I'm One or something like that. And it was not, I would have to say that if you wanted to go, oh, I want to see Quadrophenia in the best live production ever, it really wasn't the 73 shows. It wasn't bad, of course. You had Keith Moon and John Entwistle, but it wasn't as effective because of all the interruptions. I thought if they go straight through without interruption, I think it works a lot better. Oh, one little note about the 73 show. When they started playing the opening of Dr. Jimmy, and they have all the storm sounds, Keith would put umbrellas up around his set. And in the show I saw, Townsend snuck behind him and grabbed a pitcher of water. And the second Moon lowered the umbrellas before starting, Townsend hit him with the water pitcher.
So it's like it's like Rocky Horror before Rocky Horror.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that was it with Keith and Pete on stage. They were a comedy duo, unlike anything you've ever seen.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn it over to Bets for a minute.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Beth.
First of all, I'm honored because I have so much fun with you on Twitter, where you run the Who This Month, which is the Twitter facing page for the web page. And like I said, I love it because I wake up every morning. I go, okay, what little bit of lore or whatever can I glean today? And I am that person. I love those little granular, weird.
Oh, great. Great.
Weird things that no one would ever think of. And we've talked before about, I think one of our first interactions was the technology, the Who technology that never got used again. And you told me about we talked about the Quadrophenia backing tapes, which got used about 3 shows and then that was out. And then the glass box in Tampa, which if you wanted the glass box, the glass box of emotion, I love that so much.
Yes, it's they were supposed to bring it out on the '89 tour and put Townsend in a box. I think they figured out a way to keep the sound low enough for him on that tour by spreading it out amongst the instruments. But that would have been weird to see. And now Townsend in a box.
I'm sorry Keith didn't live to see that because I'm sure he would have had something for it.
He would have smashed that thing to bits within seconds.
Exactly.
Well, once I got Townsend's neck protected with that ponytail.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that reminds me of a bit that was on In the Attic. Did you guys ever see those shows?
Yes.
Religiously,
Yes.
I watched that thing. Yeah.
Where Rachel's friend, when Pete mentioned the ponytail, said, "Well, you know what is underneath every ponytail?" And I was like, "Whoa!" That in front of Pete Townsend, but then kind of.
You did mention that, like you said, that this enormous amount of information that you post on the webpage and on Twitter every day. A lot of this stuff is not stuff you would necessarily find with Google. So how do you come across this information? Like, do you have sources?
Yeah, I do have sources. I have a lot of magazines, and I'm going through Billboard all the way. I'm up to 70. I'm finishing 72, heading into 73.
Wow.
I'm trying to plug all the information into my timeline so that I can use the computer to instantly search. Okay,
Yeah.
somebody's died. Let's see every quote I can get from somebody about that person,
Yeah.
or every time they met. And it becomes a bit easier that way. The reason I started the timeline in '95 was about, well, you just talked to Joe McMichael, who I met a lot when he was here in Atlanta. And we both had the same reason. We both bought Mark Lewison's books on the Beatles, where he had this timeline.
Yeah.
And I would look at the Beatles book, and it would be March 6, 1966. John Lennon takes a break between takes 3 and take 4 of Tomorrow Never Knows to go to the bathroom. We don't yet know what magazine he took with him. And then you would go to the Who, and it would be Water, recorded sometime in the early 70s. No one knows
Yeah.
where it was recorded, when it was recorded. And so I thought, well, if I take every piece of information I have and start punching it into a computer timeline, maybe I can figure out some of these things on my own.
Yeah.
And that's where this all came from.
So when you're doing this, are there any mysteries or anything like the missing information that you would like to really zero in on and kind of figure out? You know, are there any great Last Who mysteries? Because
there are a lot of
put their
great
business out
Last
there all the
Who
time.
mysteries.
Yeah.
I'd love to, although Shell Tommy has tuned in recently, I'd love to lock down exactly when the first Who record came out,
Yeah.
because it now looks to be mid-December 1964 in the United States, which is when
that's when I was born.
yes, which is when I Can't Explain came out. It came
Yeah.
out first in the U.S.
Yeah. Oh.
and it came out almost a month later in the UK. But apparently Decca just sent out a few copies to Billboard and Variety and Cashbox. And they wrote reviews or noted that this is coming out, this I Can't Explain by The Who. And then it vanished. It like did nothing.
Yeah.
You didn't hear anything about it. Then somebody in Detroit must have discovered the record and started playing it. And all of a sudden it starts building back up. And so Decca or somebody heard about this, and they put an ad in the February 23rd Billboard saying, I Can't Explain, a hit in these cities. And then everyone in the officialdom went, okay, February 23rd, 65, this is when the single came out.
But it didn't.
But it didn't.
December.
It came out 2 months earlier.
Interesting.
And it only got the full page because it was being played in a few cities.
That's cool.
And that the more said, even today we have conflicting reports on when records came out. When you see 250th anniversary posts that are like a month apart. And
yeah.
Right. Who's Next is the biggest.
Yeah.
Because with Scott Smith's help, who used to run the Who.net and all of that, I think he may still.
Who we've had on the show. He was like our second, he was like my first interview ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he helped me out with this. He got actual ads from the last week of July in the United States with, come into our store and buy Who's Next.
Wow.
Well, it wasn't supposed to be released for another 3 weeks, according to the officialdom. But I had already I put out there, it came out in mid-August. And people were like, wait a minute, I was at Forest Hills at the end of July to see The Who, and I had bought and heard the album before I saw them. So how is this happening?
Yeah.
And that's when we started seeing in that the dates are wrong. I eventually found out that Peter Rudge, who was their road manager at that time, had come up with a scheme to release it in various countries at certain dates and then send the Who over to play a few shows and promote it. And he held back the British release until they got around to the time that they got to what was that? The Oval ground.
You know, we talked to Matt about that. Yeah.
Sounds smart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Betsy, you have another one?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay. Well, you, okay, so you started the timeline. It says, and I have a question for you about Athens later. I'll answer that later. It says, you went to, you were in the University of Athens, right?
University of Georgia in Athens.
Yeah. At Athens, yeah. So there's a rich musical history there, B-52.
Yes, there is.
All right, I'll ask now. This one's for my brother. You got any widespread panic experience?
No, I think I was gone by then.
Oh, okay. All right, cool.
I went to college there during the B-52's REM pylon period.
I was about to say pylon too, yeah.
Oh, you know pylon. Great.
I knew pylon, it kind of in passing. I did see a Love Tracker show about 1985.
Right.
Yeah, in Orlando, they came to Orlando, and like they seemed to know a lot of people about it. The following week, replacements were supposed to play. We were all in the venue waiting for the replacements to play, and Orlando ATF shut the show down.
Oh,
so the first time I ever saw the replacements was in the parking lot of the.
Oh, wow.
They didn't play. They just hung out and they left. Oh,
that's a little gross.
So then you worked at CNN?
Yes, I worked for CNN Headline News.
Okay.
For about 19 years. And then I was let go during the AOL merger, was rehired to work for TCM, Turner Classic Movies.
Oh, yeah.
Ended up in a programming group and then took a package and left.
Okay.
Then was rehired by Turner again for Filmstruck, which was an app.
Okay.
And then AT&T bought them and shut that down. And then I was rehired by them a few months later.
Okay.
And now I'm finally retired.
So in 1995,
right?
That's when you officially started the timeline that you explained earlier.
On an old Apple Mac with the big CRT and let's put everything on floppies.
Okay, between chucking the wagon and floating across, you started the timeline. All right.
Do I have anthrax?
I know what you're talking about.
Dysentery. Yeah, Brian has
dysentery.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so the Who webpage started in 1999. I've gone over this before. I've gone over it with Scott. I've gone over it with Matt. I'm just happy to talk to people because that's the world I was in. I was in that internet world that was going on. I mention it every time. The Who web ring, you know what I mean? I was on the
Which Who web ring, as there were several.
The first one. I know it had. I don't remember. I know it.
There was IGTC, which Scott also worked on. And then before that, of course, there was Alt Music Who, the news forum.
I didn't see that very much. Well, I mean, the forums got a little hairy for me at some point.
News groups and
yeah. But I just remember it said Who web ring on either side, and they'd be really like slow, chunky pages and yeah, and collections and whatnot. So what were you? You started on a Mac in '95. What made you decide to do the web page? It was just the thing that was going on. I know there was lots of activity, especially after MSG and everything was going on.
Right. Well, I finally got into the web rings, and this was on IGTC, which eventually became Odds and Sods.
Yeah.
Or switched over to Odds and Sods. And I started putting a Who this month page, which was inspired by, I had a subscription to American History magazine, and they had in every issue this month in American history.
Yeah.
And so I was this month in Who history. And one of the reasons I did it was because I figured out the way the internet worked. When I first got on, I would ask questions like, does anybody know if the Who played at such and such an event on such and such a date? Enter. Nothing. Crickets. Nothing.
Yeah.
So I watched for a while, and then I figured out, I know. Well, when the Who played on this date at this place, and within 30 seconds, are you an idiot? They never played at that date. They played on this day.
Yeah.
And
Of course it was like
Squid.
that. Of course it was like that.
right. And then I would say, thank you. I'll correct that right away. And so by doing that, by putting the information out in this form, if I got something wrong, I was hoping someone would contact me and say, you have this wrong. I have better information.
Yeah. Contact you gently. Not.
Well,
Listen,
sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
But usually I've found that if you respond gently, if you like, well, thank you, I didn't know that, and I'll get corrected, they go, oh, okay, well, I didn't mean to bother you. No, it's fine. It's fine. Just let me know whenever I get something wrong.
Yeah.
Or if you make sure you read a really long paragraph preamble before your show.
Right.
They won't yell at you.
Yeah.
Is there an instance of this happening and that you really learned something like that was the exact opposite of what you had posted or thought had happened?
Oh, yeah. For instance, the one that got solved a few years ago was posting over and over that the High Numbers came out with their one and only single, I'm the Face, backed with Zoot Suit. And somebody gets in touch and goes, I have one of those. And Zoot Suit is the A side. I'm the Face is the B. And so then we started like, well, do you have a one-off? And so we tried to start checking everybody that could who had a copy. Do you have a copy? And what's the A? What's the A side? And it was Zoot Suit across the board.
Wow.
The original issue by Fontana had Zoot Suit. I eventually tracked it down. I think even Irish Jack wasn't exactly clear about why, but it does look like Fontana pressed it with the wrong A.
Okay.
They meant I'm the Face to be the A, and Fontana pressed it backwards.
Interesting.
Which just added to the confusion. As they're trying now they're trying to promote both sides.
Yeah.
Well, play Zoot Suit, but also play I'm the Face. And nobody played it. And there's the famous story that John Entwistle's mom bought, our grandmother bought like 400 copies in an attempt to try to get it into the charts, which failed.
Oh no. And that's the thing with a lot of Who lore too, is that because there's so much myth making, that it's like trying to pin down a droplet of mercury. Because I was just the other night, I saw that Peter Noon was close by. And so I went to his Twitter feed just to see, like, is he coming to where I am? I'd like to kind of meet Peter Noon. And I saw like the fourth tweet down was a response to somebody, and it was like, no car went into the pool.
Yes.
So
and Roger goes, I know it. It definitely went into the pool.
Yeah.
And John Entwistle said before that, I will pay $1,000 to anyone that can prove to me that a car went into the pool, because it didn't happen.
Right.
They were like completely against one another.
Even in the same camp. Yeah, the stories get so conflicted and so weird and so big, and and the reality, it's hard to find. It's hard to pin it down sometimes.
Yeah, like for instance, why they were banned for life from Holiday Inns. Really? Then why is Pete Townsend writing on Holiday Inn stationery the very next year?
Hmm.
They were not. If they were banned in the United States, it didn't last but a few months
Yeah.
tops.
Um,
Uh,
yeah, I want to keep out because I want to talk about like the kids all right at length, and I want to do that in the
Yeah.
second part. So I want to finish this early '70s section in the first part. So I was reading, what's his name, Eduardo Genzolini.
yes, I've got it, but I haven't read it yet.
Well, no, I was going to talk about this book I got of his. Oh wait, not this one. I'll put this one down. Not that one yet. I'm not talking about that one.
Not that one.
Not that one.
Review soon. Review soon. This one.
That's the one. Okay.
What a beautiful book. These books are amazing. And you wrote this story in it, and I don't want to read it. I would like you to. Would you mind telling it? I mean, it's an amazing story, and it's around the time of my favorite Who tape bootleg I had ever gotten, which was, it's about a month later, the Edmonton Sundown. But can you tell the story about, was it bought on the Omni in Atlanta, Georgia on Tuesday, November 27th, 1973?
Oh yes, this is the one where I first saw them, and saw Quadrophenia.
Okay.
Right.
The after stuff, all the other stuff.
Yes. Okay. Did you ever see the movie Almost Famous?
Yeah. I have.
Many times. Yeah.
Many times. You know that embarrassing scene where his mother drops him off at a concert and then yells at him like, you know, I'll
do
be
drugs.
here, don't do drugs and all of
Right.
that, and embarrasses the hell out of him.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the show, when they played Magic Bus, I get a tap on my shoulder. My mother has come into the arena to tell me that we need to go. I think that tops Cameron Crowe a million. Fortunately, it wasn't at the point where everyone was passing joints up and down the aisle. But
But you tried to go find them at the hotel after that, right?
no, we had to go.
Okay. I
No,
must
we
have got your story
definitely had to
confused
go.
with someone else.
Yeah,
I did. I'm sorry.
yeah, I haven't ever met them in a post show.
Okay.
Got very, very close at times, but haven't really.
So did Tom.
Yeah. There, and when I saw them at Madison Square Garden Theater, which is underneath Madison Square Garden, where they played a charity show with Elvis Costello.
I was at that one.
Right. And I was with one of the original Who fans who were, they're the New York fans that attended the March 1967 shows.
Okay.
Right.
You know, we play I Can't Explain My Generation, boom, 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 with the guitars and lead. So it was someone from that. And she tried to get me backstage, but couldn't. But we did hang out with Roger's wife's parents for a while,
Yeah.
who were also there at the show.
I'll take what I can get.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of things parallel my experience. So I definitely want to hear because I got an autograph from John at a small show too. When did you get that?
The world's loudest show. Oh, look at that. Nice.
That's the one I got signed in '96, and a show which is just like your ears would be ringing if you had earplugs in. If you could feel waves coming out of the John's speakers, it was that loud in a tiny club in Atlanta.
And if it was like the show I saw, like it was also not full.
It wasn't jammed.
Right.
It was pretty well attended, but it wasn't jammed full.
On a personal level, I just want to thank you for taking screenshots of the Pie at that time, because
Yes.
I remember reading all of those daily missives from him, right? And I was one of the 400 he talked about. And you know, as far as like a different bomb, you took the picture of that. It's there because you took a picture.
Right.
You don't know it and that kind of thing. So those of us who know.
Right.
Thank you.
Oh, when is he going to write something? Well, you want to read it? Oh, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about The Kids Are All Right. Give us the beginning of that journey because you were very instrumental in this release right here, right?
Right.
Yeah. So talk about that.
We found out a lot. I found out one of the things is I had put together I took the videotape, which is what you could get at the time. There had only been one release ever of the complete version for home video, and that was on RCA Select Division in
Yeah.
1981. And copies of that were floating around, and copies of the 16 millimeter copy that were complete were floating around. But the ones that you got on home video were cut down, like a quick one while he's away was cut down to just the ending, and other parts of it had been sped up, very noticeably sped up. So I had put together, and I know I need to restore these liner notes on all the albums. And I did for the one for The Kids Are All Right. I went through and did the whole movie. This has been cut. This is cut. This is sped up. Well, at the time, there was a bunch of guys working with Pete on his video for the Lifehouse concerts that he did in 2001, I believe. And they had put it out and they were looking for something else that they could do. And they stumbled across my webpage and read that and said, why don't we restore this? And I got the story from them later. So they go to the Who and say, we'd like to restore it. Do you have a copy? And they gave them a 3/4 inch pneumatic cassette that was the same as the home video.
Yeah.
And so the hunt was on. And as part of that and getting the information about things, I tracked Jeff Stein down through the DGA. They gave me his phone number. And I called him, and he was stuck in traffic in Los Angeles.
Uh-huh.
And we had like a 40 or 50-minute conversation while he was stuck in traffic about putting together the original Kids Are All Right. And answered questions like what film existed, what he was trying to get in there, the parts that are left out, like everyone notes that Rick Danko is credited but is not in the film.
Yeah.
And why that is, because apparently he wouldn't sign off the rights, so they had to cut it out. And also about him and Thelma Schoonmaker, who's
Yes.
Martin Scorsese's editor, went through all of the outtakes of Woodstock at Warner Brothers because Martin Scorsese's notes that he took while he was above the stage of what was filmed were lost in a fire a few years after Woodstock.
Uh-huh.
So they're going through all of the footage, and Stein said that the closest thing I found to the Abby Hoffman incident was a shot of the camera on the microphone as it was rocking back and forth immediately after whatever happened. And he was desperately looking for some fight between the members of the Who to put in the film and never really found anything. So they brought me in as an advisor, like to make sure that, you know, you need to find this. And it was quite a journey getting that restored. They they finally, I think, found a either very good positive or negative at UCLA, but that took some digging to find it.
Yeah.
And that's where the version that we know now comes from. They did a 4K scan, and then put the film together. Should I go on about the aftermath of when it finally came out?
Yeah, one of your.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So it finally comes out at the New York Film Festival in '04, and I go to the event at the Waldorf Astoria,
Oh yeah.
where Jeff Stein and Roger Daltrey are there to make up. And the reason the reason they're there to make up is because after the film originally came out, both Roger and John badmouthed him all over the place. And I didn't hear every detail, but apparently there's a great book to be had from Stein and his brother's position as to what happened to them after The Kids Are All Right came out, but that story has never really come out.
Yeah.
Do we have any idea why they were bad mouthing him? Do we know why? Not like what happened, but what the feeling was, or
well, you
not
can
like
get a lot of it by reading the Twilight of the Gods book.
I have it. Yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
What happened there was it appears that throughout the late 70s with The Who, there were two camps. There was the Pete camp and then the Roger camp.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill Curbishley sort of like went back and forth because, of course, Roger had brought Bill Curbishley on,
Yeah.
but he was friendly with Pete. So Pete does a thing like, Jeff Stein approached him in March '75 in New York and said, I want to do the movie. Let me get the material together. And so he goes off and Pete says, okay, fine. If you're going to do that, and, I think Jeff Stein had to cry in front of Pete in order to break him down. He did that when Roger heard about it. The move was on from his camp to replace Jeff Stein.
Yeah. With Tony Klinger.
With Tony Klinger, who
Yeah.
was the director of his One of the Boys video.
Yeah.
And so he ended up, Klinger became the producer. But it was definitely throughout the film was an effort to push Jeff Stein, out of the film. And when it came out, I don't know whether Daltrey and Entwistle were, whether they were just supporting their side or they really felt disappointed in the film. I think Roger really did, because he was always, I've got to get this redone right with everything in chronological order and everything made. And that became later on the Amazing Journey film.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of bad blood between them, and it had something to do with Jeff Stein having some of the home movies that people had sent in to use in the film. And then perhaps somebody wasn't being paid, and so perhaps he was holding on to it, the films, and all kinds of trouble came out of that. But this is just rumors I've heard. None of this is locked down.
Yeah.
Hearsay. It's all hearsay.
It's all hearsay.
It's all hearsay.
Yeah.
Not a word of truth.
I'm sorry. Who said? This is all hearsay.
Who say? But the thing I get, like, I think John had said something like, it groused about how they felt like the direction had been done by somebody who was blind, deaf, and dumb, is what I think what his words were. But for me, I love that anarchic kind of pastiche, because for me, that encapsulates what the Who was. It was anarchy. And I don't know, it just, like, that was the cemented the whole love of the band that I had, because it was so funny and so frenetic and so crazy, and kind of a comedy film. And I've seen marketing from that era that called it the first rock and roll disaster movie, and it kind of is, and that's what makes it great for me. So that's a preference, but I love it.
A lot of that film was done in negative reaction to the Led Zeppelin movie.
Yeah, which is, the song
yes,
so boring.
John's
what,
segment
the fantasy
in the
thing?
film. Yeah, John's segment in the film is meant to be a parody of the fantasy segments from
Yeah.
The song remains the same.
And it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
One quick question about the film before I get to you get back to the after party or the restoration premiere. Do you think there's enough material in it, like, left? And I don't know if you have personal knowledge of this or not, about if there's enough for another documentary that's more of a get back type situation.
Well, mostly it comes out, and some of it has come out from what they have in the files that was shot for the movie. So we've already gotten Kilburn out.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I would love to see. I mean, we had the bits of pieces of the individual cameras. I would like to see every bit of that.
Yeah.
And also, I'd like to see some more of it if it was possible to go back to the original elements. But who would pay for that? I don't know. Because what they did was they would take videotapes and run it in late 1978 kinescope version. Well, right now, especially with AI, you can imagine how that could be cleaned up
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
and look so much better.
Yeah.
Some of that archival material.
Right. Well, okay, so you went out for the premiere of the restoration?
Right, and that's where I met Roger.
Okay.
My only one time I met Roger.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of people there coming up saying something to him, so I came up. And I had heard through the grapevine that Pete had gotten some songs together. All through the early 2000s, rumor after rumor. We're just about to record a new album. We're about to record a new album. And so I go up to Roger, bend over to his ear, and I say, yeah, and good luck with Pete and the new song. He turns and looks at me. If he had had lasers in his eyes, I'd be a foot smaller now. I mean, you've never seen just this wave of anger come over his face. And I'm like, oh
no.
What did I just say? How did this? And as he moves on to the next person, he looks back at me and says, oh, just about giving up on him.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then he sent you to Bill Kerbishley.
Yeah.
For a ride.
No, I think that, but it was interesting that later we had the screening at the New York Film Festival. He absolutely refused to step a foot into the theater while the film was playing.
Just because he's still kind of salty about the whole situation.
Not really. He did go on stage beforehand with Jeff Stein, and they both twirled microphones.
Okay.
But he left the second they got near the gate because he told people, I was there listening to some of his interview, he absolutely hates seeing or hearing himself.
That's interesting.
He is one of those people that cannot stand the sound of his recorded voice.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I wonder what he sounds like to himself. I don't know.
Playback must be hard for him then.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I can imagine. He has a studio in his barn. I wonder how much mixing he has to do for listening to his tracks.
Yeah.
So your page, your web page, is such a great resource for
Thank you.
to do any kind of research. Unfortunately, right when I started this channel, for some reason, Odds and Sods kind of disappeared. Who.net vanished. So
I'm not sure about why.
yeah,
I'd love to know.
Yeah, no one knows. It's kind of weird, but that's that. That of course the Who.net / Who tab is still there. This is still my visited site,
Right.
as Tom can attest. We have both poured over that page a lot. Has the band ever been in touch about the page specifically, especially since you work with people for the video and all that kind of stuff?
The closest I've ever gotten is I mentioned something about my page during that Waldorf Astoria to someone, and they went, "Oh, you don't think they know about you?" Like, and that's as close as I've ever come.
That's enough.
I haven't. I've occasionally oh, they know who you are.
Oh,
But yes,
they
but
get you a little book.
yeah, I have on a couple of occasions asked Pete a question, but I've sent it through Nicola.
Yeah.
Just to clear things up. I try not to bother him.
Yeah.
I think that comes from working at Headline News because we would have celebrities come in.
Right.
And it was very, keep your working and keep your distance and don't bother the celebrity.
Yeah.
So I just get the thing like, oh, he's probably going to go, oh, another one of these fanatics.
Well, that's okay. I mean, I got the same vibe when Matt Kent said yes to coming on the show.
Yeah.
Or when you were so willing to come on the show, when everyone was like, "Yeah, we'll come. Yeah, of course I know your show." I was like, "Wait, no."
Yeah,
Yeah.
So you always feel like I'm getting closer and closer to the circle, and too close to the sun. Too close to the sun.
It gets weirder the closer you get.
Yes.
That's from every story I've heard. Mostly because some of the fans get a little proprietary once you get very close.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets a little weird.
So you still post.
I just have this. Oh,
Yeah. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I just have this image of going backstage and it being the wrong time.
Yeah.
What is it?
Because who backstages can be like there's a thing I just posted that John Entwistle said about how in 1972 they were getting along so well and it was weird. Although there are violent screaming matches backstage, but that's good compared to what it sometimes is. It's like, oh yeah, I can see going backstage and stepping in the middle of that.
Band politics are so weird, especially when you have other people besides the four guys. You know what I mean? Like, it's just odd. You still post every day on social media.
Right.
It is a good day. I'm talking to the two people in this conversation right now that if I can scoop on any Who story, I give myself a pat on the back. And by scoop, I don't mean get it when you don't get it, just I get it a couple minutes first. Right?
Yeah.
And that's you. I get so happy. Like, Brian.
I got it posted before you.
But I definitely slack. You're definitely on it every day. You must still love it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's still something where it's like a puzzle to be solved and get all the pieces together. And I remember you said, oh no, it was Matt Kent. I think it was in the interview, or perhaps it was Joe McMichael, where Pete was like, "Why would you want to do this?" And I'm thinking, have you ever heard of Kirkle numbers? The guy that listened to all of Mozart and noted they go in this chronological order.
Yeah.
It's just like, what wouldn't you think? We need to get the time straight so we know what was really going on, because it does have something to do with the art.
Yeah.
You can't really deal with the art unless you know what happened.
Yeah. I mean,
it's kind of like the guy. You were the guy that used to go through Bob Dylan's garbage.
Yes,
that's different. That's a little different.
It's
kind of like that, but there are things that like we just want to know. And I was going to ask.
Can you name the two Pete Townsend songs where he's referred to?
Dylan? But one is the secret.
Not Dylan, but
the garbage guy.
The garbage guy, yeah.
No, does Pete talk about him?
Yes, he's in.
Oh my God.
He's in a Hand or a Face. There's a man going through your dustbin, only this time he's looking for food.
Yeah.
And I believe there's a reference in I Don't Even Know Myself. Because I think that song may have been written in response partially to the stories that had been coming out in Rolling Stone about it, the guy going through Dylan's garbage.
Go ahead, Ethan.
No, you.
Oh, I was just gonna say, is there, speaking of going through garbage or whatever, is there any kind of lore, any kind of thing that like trivia that like you just like, it's real and you can't believe it's real? I mean, for me, it's the whole monkeys story.
Yeah.
Where kids like, and the idea that they would have an English version of the monkeys with those four guys.
Right.
And he talked about it a few times. Like it wasn't just a one-off, like Kit just talking. Like he was like, "Yeah, we're really going to do this." Is there something like that for you?
Just thinking about that, 67 through 68, there's a story about every 3 months about how they're going to be the new monkeys. And definitely in 68, it was like, it's coming out, it's happening. It's going to be called Sound and Music City. It's happening on the BBC this fall. And the Who are going to be playing on every show. And of course, nothing ever came of it.
Yeah.
It's very weird. I'm thinking of some of the things that I've discovered of late. There's one that there's a blue plaque about. And that is the one that was where they had the railway hotel.
Yes.
Which when I went into London in 1998, I got pictures of it about a year and a half before it burned down.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's a plaque there saying this is where the first guitar was smashed because Pete Townsend rammed the neck of the guitar through the ceiling, and that's and he got mad and he smashed the guitar. And then the next week, everyone said this. There's an interview that I found, and some other people found it too, but I was the first one that just really noticed it. Pete, in front of Roger and John, says, that never happened. That was a lie that Kit Lambert told me to tell. It was just an easy way to tell it to journalists. And then they told they really very clear, this is the actual story. Yeah. Is that they were desperately looking for something to promote the band. And Pete came, well, I saw this guy in art college and he smashed a cello. What if we smash our instruments at the end? And so everyone had to come up with something. John tried it. It never worked out. So he just quit. Keith, of course, loved it. And Roger said, well, the only thing I could come up with was I go back and I bang Keith's cymbal with the microphone. And you can see him doing that in early.
You can see him on the Shindig show that aired opposite the Charlie Brown Christmas premiere that I saw.
Yes, that's another weird coincidence.
Yeah.
Townsend knowing the future is another big one. Where, I did the internet in 1970, 71. Mm-hmm. Invented that, and then I foresaw 9/11 in my short story, The Boy Who Cried. And I foresaw that a year before. Yeah. It's like, how does he do these things?
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe he wrote for The Simpsons.
Could be.
Yeah.
He was almost on it, but
yeah.
Well, yes. Yeah. That's a heartbreaker. We saw. The other day on Twitter, I'm sure you posted it. Yeah, I got them. They're over there. I opened mine because I like dust.
Yeah, it would be fun, but I have friends who collect things, and it's like, don't open it.
Yeah. I'm working on a super secret Who Lego project right now.
Yeah.
Tell us about your mosaic in the background.
Yes.
Okay, this is the actual work put together by an artist named Marcia Cunningham in Long Island. She does guitars, surfboards, all in tile. Right. And my wife got her. She's a friend of my wife's, and she She said, "What's your favorite album?" She had. I hold the Who Sellout. That's
Yeah.
my favorite. It's always been. So she made the cover in tile. It's quite a heavy one. And do you see this one over
Yes.
here?
That. Yeah,
Looking
what
at
we got?
that.
This one was another one she commissioned.
Oh, look at the face. Oh, wow, it's painting.
I love that one.
And this is by Adrian Teal, who does characters for the new Spitting Image in the UK.
That's great.
And he also does these. But he sent she sent some pictures to him, and this came back. It was a birthday surprise.
It's really great.
Is that the puppeteers spitting image?
Yes,
The ones who did a Land of Confusion as
Yes.
well?
right.
Okay.
Yes. Although that was the original one. And if you want to tie that all back together, the guys that did the original Spitting Image did that album cover.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Yep.
No.
Yes. That's where they got started.
That's that's cool.
A pretty storied show for the Zach era is the House of Blues '99 show. One of those.
Right.
And you were at one of those, right?
Yes, I was. And I was about 5 or 6 rows back. Pete was having some trouble with people whistling in the audience. Who was firing off his tinnitus.
Mhm.
But they played some things that they've never played anywhere else, like After the Fire and Pure and Easy. And it was great seeing those. The only negatives were that I was standing there and a guy behind me tried to crawl up me in order to get above the crowd and crawl toward the band. And it was at that point that I thought, you couldn't be a classical music fan, could you?
Yeah, right. Was that one of the ones Eddie Vedder was at?
Yes,
Okay.
with C Average. And I have the poster and the ticket framed.
Have you gotten to many solo shows?
Saw Roger, but you almost wouldn't call it a solo show. I saw Roger in '94 here in Atlanta, and he had John Entwistle on bass, Simon was on lead guitar, and Zach was on drums, along with an orchestra. And they performed a medley from Quadrophenia, which was the first time that they had done Quadrophenia as a unit since '74.
Yeah.
And let's talk about something that was probably horrible for Roger, but absolutely made it for me. We had a torrential rainstorm during the ending.
Oh,
It was
wow.
an outdoor festival, and he's standing on stage, stripped to the waist, rain running down all over him while he's screaming, "Love, rain, or me."
Oh.
It was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen.
And that's why he's allowed to get mad when you bring up Pete Townsend for songs. Did you get, and I mean, my last question, did you ever get to any of the Pete Townsend like '96 tour?
No, I've never seen any of the Pete Townsend solo shows because it was hard for me working to get away.
Right.
And they were always Northeast and West Coast.
Right. And I can't wait. I see all your Criterion collections in the background.
Yeah.
I can't wait for the Listomania Criterion collection. It's going to be amazing.
Yes. It's way overdue.
Yeah.
If there ever was an
And they need to have
all-star, it is Ken Russell all day long.
Yes. And they need to come out with a special edition with the additional model of that Roger carries.
Well, there is a Ken resurgence big time. Like people have been talking a lot about the Devils and stuff like that. So it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, I had a connection with that too, which is
Yeah.
because we tried to run it on Filmstruck, the app, and it came, and the only copy that you can legally run in the United States is a 4:3 letterbox version in standard definition.
Yeah, that was another little piece of lore that I heard recently. Somebody was talking about how at some point Keith and Oliver talked about how they wanted to do a TV show called The Dinner Party. Have you heard about this? Where they would
I'm
invite
not
guests
surprised.
in?
They were working on a lot of different things,
Yeah.
but generally then they would sober up and have forgotten them. There's also the Sam Peckinpah directed version of Soldiers
Yes.
3 with Keith Moon
Yes.
that Keith kept talking about.
This was really, this was an honor because I have so much fun with you on
Great. I'm glad.
and I'll always be grateful that you transcribed that one 1967 story about the world's greatest John Entwistle fan, the girl that got backstage and screamed and hollered. And he was like, he was so uncomfortable trying to calm her down. I love that story.
Well, if anything else comes
there,
up,
watching this.
just get in touch with me. I'm on Twitter
You
or
know?
whatever it's called these days.
I am having a dreams of a Uber summit on the Zoom with all the guests.
We should live sometime. That would be fun.
Yeah. Or get Matt to put
Maybe.
together a USA convention.
Yeah.
Maybe we can figure out who plays what on McVicker.
Or maybe you can figure out if the end of Pure and Easy, who sings "There Once Was a Note." Listen.
Mm-hmm.
I want to listen to that.
Yeah.
By the way, what version are you talking about?
I am talking about the Odds and Sods version, but also the extended one on the Who's Next box set. So both of them mainly.
Well, if I can give you a clue, when they played it live, Pete sang that part
Right.
that you're talking about.
But do you hear it? Do you hear what we're saying? I'm not a little crazy.
Well, sometimes because the high parts of most of the songs on the Who is John.
Right.
That is true. But to me, it sounds a little bit more Pete's high voice rather than John's high voice.
Yeah.
Brian, thanks so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Veronica, thanks so much.
I have two-tone robe